William Grant Still was an African-American classical composer who wrote more than 150 compositions. He was the first African-American to conduct a major symphony orchestra, the first to have a symphony of his own, performed by a leading orchestra, the first to have an opera performed by a major opera company, and the first to have an opera performed on national television. He is often referred as the Dean of African-American composers. His musical training was twofold, embracing the European tradition at Oberlin College and the African-American culture that affected him. For example, Negro spirituals. The piece of music for which Still is best remembered today is his Symphony No. 1, Afro-American. The symphony is in 4 movements. It combines themes of blues music with a symphonic dimension and meticulous orchestration. Still was influenced by the great jazz musician of his day, and in particular by W.C. Handy, the father of blues. Margaret Bonds was an American composer and pianist, one of the first black composers and performers to gain recognition in the United States. She is best remembered today for her frequent collaborations with Langston Hughes. A native of Chicago, Bonds grew up in a home visited by many of the leading black intellectuals of the era. Among house guests were soprano Abby Mitchell and composer Florence Price. Florence Price is considered the first black woman in the United States to be recognized as a symphonic composer. Even though her training was steeped in European tradition, Price's music consists of mostly the American ideals and reveals her Southern roots. What up, class? It's Gabriel again. What I found interesting in my research was that going through YouTube, I found not that much on these African-American composers. Obvious because during the time period, African-Americans weren't really accepted to play such classical music, and it was very rare. I guess it wasn't our cup of tea. But in recent history, I found some kids in Chicago who were playing classical instruments like the cello, violin, and some other instruments, and they're inspired by the very composers that I am discussing about. So I hope you enjoy this clip.
This is ABC 7 News, Chicago's #1 news, with Cheryl Burton, Ron Majors, weather with meteorologist Jerry Taft, and sports with Mark Giangreco. This is ABC 7 News at 5.
It's the story of some musicians inspired by the work of black composers around the world. Harry Porterfield says these are some musicians you should know. Playing the works of black composers to teach others about some great classical music. Harry Porterfield says these are some musicians you should know. A violinist is looking to teach more people about the rich history of African-American classical music composers. Rachel Barton Pine and a group of young musicians are learning and playing compositions that date back several centuries. They were written by black composers here in Chicago and around the world. ABC 7's Harry Porterfield says these musicians are some people you should know.
The music describes a deserted garden, and 10-and-a-half-year-old Ade Williams plays it as she envisions what it depicts.
I think of a garden that's been deserted. It's like, it used to be all beautiful and stuff, happy flowers, and now it's like only weeds.
The music is a work of Florence Beatrice Price, who once lived in Chicago. She is credited with being the first African-American woman to compose a symphony. She wrote 4.
I feel like I'm playing a piece for my own people, and it's kind of cool.
Violinist Rachel Barton Pine has sought to create a library of music by black classical composers through her foundation. Here, she is playing a composition by Samuel Coleridge Taylor.
There are hundreds and hundreds of composers of African descent from all over the world. from Africa, from Europe, from America, the Caribbean, Latin America, going back all the way to the 1700s to the present day.
14-year-old Clayton Penrose Whitmore plays the music of William Grant Still. A prolific classical composer, he wrote symphonies and operas.
I like the soulful, sweet melodies, and on other pieces, like some of his symphonic works, I like the playful and energetic melody.
By getting this history back out there, it just helps to break down those barriers so that everybody can feel comfortable enjoying this amazing art form.
Rachel Barton Pine and the Young Violinists, some musicians you should know. Cheryl?
Wow.
Ron?
Really nice.
I love the way they describe their music. They're very passionate about it. It's very
Thanks,
nice.
Harry.
Thanks for sharing.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip. I got one more to show you, and it's the next clip I'm about to show you is William Grant. I just wanted to show you an actual example of some of his work. In my opinion, not coming from any like critic or anything like that, but this composition is pretty good. You can actually kind of hear where he's getting his inspiration from. I hear, in the most part, I hear a Native American type sound coming through it. I hear jazz. I hear some of the European classical stuff that we taught through in class. But yeah, I guess let me just play the video. It would be best illustrated if I just do that. So here we go.
William Grant Still is one of America's most important composers. He broke a lot of barriers. He became the first black conductor to conduct a major American orchestra. He became the first black composer whose symphony was performed by a major American orchestra. And he was also the first black composer whose opera was produced by a major American opera company. His Symphony No. 1, subtitled The Afro-American, is his most often performed work today, and in fact it's actually one of the most often performed works by any black composer. This is one of his violin pieces based on the Negro spiritual, Here's One.